How to apply for a marriage certificate in Dwarka. Dwarka, which is a city in the state of Gujarat, is a religiously significant area in India. Dwarka is an important location in the Hindu religion, which means if you live in India and are Hindu, Dwarka may be a great destination for your wedding. In order to receive a marriage certificate in Dwarka, you will have to have a marriage ceremony, comply with your personal marriage laws, meet certain Gujarat requirements, and you will have to send in an application. Part 1. Deciding to get married in Dwarka. 1. Understand where Dwarka is located. Dwarka is an Indian city in the state of Gujarat. The city sits on the Arabian Sea at the opening of the Gomti River. Gujarat state is located in the northwest portion of the country of India. 2. Consider the common reasons people may want to get married in Dwarka. Dwarka is known for its importance in Hindu lore. It is the only place to be considered both one of the 4 holy places, Chardham, and one of the 7 ancient towns, Saptapuris, to visit. Every year, thousands of pilgrims from all around the world visit Dwarka because of its historical and religious importance. Due to Dwarka's historical significance, getting married there is like having a Hindu destination wedding. 3. Plan your wedding. Once you know about Dwarka and why you might want to get married there, you will need to plan your wedding. To do so, choose a place and time for your Dwarka wedding. Be sure to make reservations well in advance and understand when the best times are in that part of India. While planning your marriage, be sure you do what is necessary to comply with your Personal Marriage Act, which is a requirement for receiving a certificate of marriage. Part 2. Complying with your Personal Marriage Act. 1. Determine what personal law applies to you. India is a diverse population and as such, they have citizens belonging to many different religions and faiths. India allows all of their citizens to be governed under personal laws that adhere to their religious beliefs. Therefore, when you get married in India, your religion and background will dictate the laws you must follow. Determine the law that applies to you and find the conditions of marriage. For example, the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955 applies to all forms of Hinduism. This act also applies to any permanent resident of India who is not Muslim, Jewish, Christian, or Parsi. In India, the following personal laws relate to marriage. The Indian Christian Marriage Act of 1872. The Anand Marriage Act of 1909. The Parsi Marriage and Divorce Act of 1936. The Special Marriage Act of 1954. The Hindu Marriage Act of 1955, and the Foreign Marriage Act of 1969. 2. Meet your law's conditions of marriage. Once you know the personal law that applies to you and your spouse, you will need to meet that law's conditions for marriage in order to receive a marriage certificate in Gujarat. For example, if you are getting married under the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955, you must meet certain conditions in order for a marriage to be able to take place. If certain conditions are not met, the marriage may either be considered void, automatically nullified, or voidable, annulled at the request of someone. A marriage will be void if the groom is under 21 or the bride is under 18, either party is not of the Hindu religion at the time of the marriage, either party is already married, or the parties are related. A marriage is voidable if either party is unable to procreate, one party did not willingly consent to the marriage, or the bride was already pregnant by another man that is not the groom. 3. Solemnize the marriage. If you meet all the conditions for marriage, you will need to solemnize your marriage by having a ceremony. Each personal law will have different ceremony requirements, so be sure you look at the law that applies to you. For example, the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955 requires that you have a ceremony, but it recognizes there are many different, but equally valid, ceremonies. Therefore, a marriage can be solemnized in accordance with the customary rites and ceremonies of either the bride or groom. 4. Meet personal law registration requirements. In addition to having to meet the registration requirements in the Gujarat Registration of Marriage Act of 2006, you must also meet any registration requirements laid out in your personal law. Under the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955, in order to register a marriage, you must have performed a ceremony and the bride and groom must have been living together as husband and wife. Additionally, you must meet the registration requirements set forth in your state, i.e., the Gujarat Registration of Marriage Act of 2006. Part 3. Meeting the requirements of the Gujarat Registration of Marriage Act of 2006. 1. Contract for marriage. In Gujarat, which is where Dwarka is located, in order for a marriage to be registered, the marriage must have been contracted for. This simply means solemnizing your marriage in accordance with your personal laws. 2. Meet the Act's time restrictions. Once you have contracted for marriage, you will be required to register for marriage within 30 days from the date of the marriage. However, you can register after the 30-day period has expired, but you will be subject to a 1,000 rupee fine. 3. Satisfy the registrar. When you register your marriage in Gujarat, the registrar, who is an individual appointed by the government, may refuse your registration under certain circumstances. If the registrar does refuse your registration, they may ask you to provide more information in order to satisfy the registrar. The registrar can refuse your registration if they believe that the marriage was not performed in accordance with personal laws. The identity of the parties or witnesses is not established beyond a reasonable doubt, or the documents provided do not prove the marital status of the parties. 4. Register your marriage. If you have satisfied all other requirements, you will fill out a number of forms and register your marriage. Part 4. Registering the marriage. 1. Fill out an application for filing a memorandum of marriage. To start the registration process, you will need to obtain an application for filing a memorandum of marriage, which can be found online. Once you fill out the application, you and your spouse will need to sign and date the application. This form, which will be sent to the registrar, asks you to declare the following: that your marriage has been solemnized, that your marriage can be registered under the Gujarat Registration of Marriage Act of 2006, that you have met any conditions set out in your Personal Marriage Act, that the application you are filling out is being done so honestly, and that you will attach 2 copies of your memorandum of marriage to the application. 2. Complete a memorandum of marriage. In addition to your application, you will also need to fill out a memorandum of marriage, which can be found in the Gujarat Registration of Marriage Act of 2006. Every memorandum must be signed by you and your spouse, by the person who officiated your marriage, and by witnesses. In addition to the required signatures, your memorandum must include the date of your marriage, the place of your marriage, and the status of the bride and groom at the time of the marriage, e.g., widowed or divorced. 3. Submit your application and 2 copies of your memorandum. When you submit your application along with 2 copies of your memorandum, you will need to do so to the Registrar of Marriages in Gujarat. 4. Pay the required fees. Upon submitting the required documents, you will be asked to pay a filing fee, which is permitted by the Gujarat Registration of Marriage Act of 2006. 5. Receive a certificate of registration of marriage. Once you submit your application and memorandum, and pay the prescribed fees, your marriage will be registered in Gujarat. After your marriage has been registered, the registrar will send you and your spouse a certificate of registration of marriage.